Welcome to the Northeast Kingdom Voice. I'm your host, Scott Wheeler. Today's guests are Gloria Jackson and Mark Levier of the Jackson Lodge in Canaan. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
So, my first question is my name.
Did pretty darn good. I've heard that version, and that's a good version.
So tell me it. Repeat it again, then, so people
my
know
name
it.
is Mark Levier.
That you're that she's the owner, and you're just the other person in the operation.
Well, I've got a business card. When we first talked about developing a business card, I wanted to put boyfriend as a title next to my name, but Gloria said, no, it needs to be a little more professional. So I'm officially the host at Jackson's Lodge.
Oh, the host.
The host.
So, Gloria, now let's, Gloria, tell me a little bit about the history, because this is a family run operation that was in your family?
Yes, my parents, Elma and Audrey Jackson, purchased Jackson's Lodge in 1958. Mom was pregnant with daughter number 4. I'm daughter number 5, and my younger sister Hailey is number 6. So my parents ran, and my mom ran because my dad was a logger, and he wasn't on the property all day. He was in the woods working. So my mom ran the lodge with help and raised 6 daughters. And we grew up working with her. And my older sister Bonnie was one of the pastry cooks for the cafe. They had a little, back in the early 50s, before 1970, we had no kitchens in our cabins. So it was all, what do you call that plan?
Well,
It's
the American plan.
The American plan. So, and Audrey ran the kitchen with her daughters, my older sisters, Bonnie, Connie, and Donna, and the guests would come up for breakfast and lunch and dinner.
Were there twins? I heard a couple rhyming names. Were there any twins in there?
No twins. No, so my oldest sister Bonnie was born in 1950. So she was 8 at the time that Mom and Dad bought the lodge. And then there was my second oldest sister Connie, and then a sister Donna, and then my 4th sister, who Mom was pregnant with in 1958, Francine, and then of course Gloria, myself, and my younger sister Hailey. So they raised 6 girls, and we all learned how to clean really well working at the lodge.
Tell me, I know you'd contacted me and some other people, and is trying to figure out the actual age of the place, and you found out, is this your 100th year?
Yes. So our local historian Dennis Fuller, who is the runs the Historical Society in Canaan, we've been trying to figure out when the Marshall camps was built, and we have looked and searched, and we could never find the exact date. And then this winter, early March, he was in Coburg looking. He was in Coburg at the library, looking at the News and Sentinel archives, and he wasn't even searching Harry Marshall or Jackson's Lodge. He was searching another family name, and the article on the next page was an article that was written on May 29th, 1958, when Elma and Audrey Jackson purchased the lodge. And in the article, it mentions that the late Harry Marshall and his wife Rose purchased the land from Sam Brunelli Farm in 1925, and they built 2 cabins and a lodge. And it also states that they started getting really busy with guests, and they had to build more cabins. And then a few years later, they built a new lodge. And at the time, the lodge, and I'm not sure of the date of the lodge, but at the time they built the second lodge, which is the lodge that we run now, was the largest log structure in the state of Vermont at that time.
How many? So it started out as Marshall's. How many owners has it had since then, and how many different? Or do you know that?
When Harry Marshall, I do, yes. When Harry Marshall first bought the property, he called it Marshall's Tavern. And then him and Rose ran it for 21 years. And then they sold the property to Miller Duff, who was their right-hand man. Harry passed away, and Rose sold the property to Miller Duff. And he bought it in 1946, and in 1958 my parents bought the property from Miller Duff and his wife.
So owners, is that 3 owners in 100 years?
3 owners in 100 years.
Well, that isn't too bad. So are any of your children lining up to be the next owners?
I don't have any children of my own, and all my sisters are running their own businesses and doing their own thing. So I in 1986, when I purchased the lodge with, at the time, my husband, Jerry DeVoe, we ran it from 86 together for 20 years. And then I took over the lodge myself and ran it with Mark since 2015, right?
The host.
Okay.
You ran it with the host.
2010 is when Mark came and joined my team, and is now working with.
And became the host.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
So
ultimately, what's worth noting is that Gloria here has been the steward of that beautiful place for the last 39 years this season.
The longest owner.
But how many have you worked? So did you work there your entire life, or have you had a what's that?
I worked for my mom and dad, and then I was a dental assistant for 3 or 4 years in Colebrook. And then I got married in 85, and then in 86 my parents wanted to sell the lodge, and at the time I was the only one that was in a position to be able to purchase the lodge from my parents. And
Are you happy?
I am so happy now. Yes. For a while I wasn't sure if that was what I wanted to do for the rest of my life, but I'm so glad I did, and I truly believe that I was the right daughter to do it, because I have so much respect for the old antique and the history, and I haven't changed much. I've improved a lot, but I'm trying to keep the place the same, so it will always be the same. That's what I hope.
So what is your role, Mark, besides being the host?
Well, I think I can best describe that as being the facilitator. So in that role, right. Gloria, to her credit, has a beautiful vision for the property and to preserve the antiquity of it. But mind you, we have 18 buildings on the property. And so there's a lot of things to manage, touch, keep up. And so my role can best be defined as the facilitator of making all those components come together, ultimately for a memorable experience for our guests. So the word host on my business card is indeed appropriate, because one of the unique things about the lodge, if anyone were to happen to look at our peer reviews in TripAdvisor, one of the things that's most noted is this genuine hospitality they experience from Gloria and I. We may have 100 things on our to-do list that day, but when a guest wants to talk, we stop and we talk. And so that's a good summary of my role in this enterprise.
So when this establishment began, did it have rooms? Like you were saying, Marshall's was a tavern, but did he also have rooms?
No, he just had cabins, and none of the cabins had kitchens until 1970. My parents ran the little restaurant from 1958, and they closed it in 1970. And they put in kitchens in all the cabins at that time. So it was just
But underneath, but with the Marshalls, they had cabins then, because you were saying they called it a tavern. So he also had cabins there.
he did. He built two the first year. Him and Rose purchased it in 1925, and then he started building more cabins. And there's old maps that have cabins scattered all over the property. And the second row, we have like 3 rows of cabins. There's the lakefront cabins that are all the original log cabins. And the second row were little cabins that I believe two were put together when they brought the kitchens in, because there are only a bathroom and bedrooms in the cabins. And then you could tell it was like 2 buildings put together. And I ran the lodge until, 2000, I think it was 2001. We tore down 2 of those old cabins, and then we tore down the other 3 2 years later, and put in some bigger cabins with a full kitchen. And yeah.
Cabins do you have now?
Cabins I have now.
How many cabins?
14.
14. And what about what about other lodging units?
So the
Anything
first
else?
lodge that Harry and Rose built is now the dormitory. And that's where all the help would stay when my parents were running the lodge and people were running the restaurant and working there. When I purchased the lodge in '86, I didn't have a place to live on the property. So I took 2 of the rooms in the dormitory and turned those into little like Wayfair rooms for guests to have an overnight stay in, because we only had 2-bedroom cabins and 3-bedroom cabins, and a lot of times people just wanted to stop and like somebody traveling from Maine to Montreal would stop. It's like halfway and stay a night and then continue on their trip. So that building that used to be the dormitory, in 1986, when Jerry and I bought the lodge for Mom and Dad, we put in a full kitchen and turned it into a living quarters for us and the 2 boys, Matthew and Jeremy. So we lived there. We lived there until we divorced. So then I
So that isn't where you live now?
It is where I live now. Yeah, I live there now, but with 2 less rooms, because I turned them into the little Wayfair rooms.
Scott,
So you know one thing that, yep.
I just thought I'd add a little note of interest regarding the original cabins too. So the first 5 cabins that were built right along the waterfront. Beautiful, beautiful cedar log cabins, and Gloria has invested everything to continue to preserve and maintain those. The cabins that were in the back rows, it's interesting, and you have to think in terms of the majority of guests who were there at the time, most of these people were fishermen. And so that clientele had one priority: get on the water and experience the amazing fishery that existed at that time. So when you looked at old pictures of some of these cabins, very rudimentary, very rustic is a good word for it. It seemed as though back in the 20s, 30s, 40s, people had more of a utilitarian mindedness about things. Those old cabins, there was nothing pretty about them, but it was a roof over their head, and they would be fed a well-cooked meal in Audrey's Cafe. But those cabins were of a vintage that to this day, we have one cabin, the Cabin Bear, that is an example of that early 30s, 40s vintage cabin. And then, of course, the second row that Gloria and Jerry built was just beautiful, fine, modern cabins of modern amenities. But it was interesting, the contrast between the first 5 cabins right on the lakefront, beautiful cedar log cabins. Inside, they're just gorgeous. And then there was these very rustic cabins that were built behind the front row, and only one of those still remains today.
So I assume you started out. No, did your family start out? Was there already plumbing?
There was plumbing. I don't know what they had in the ground at the time, but my parents did a lot of upgrading with that when they bought in the 50s, put in septic tanks. And I know that some of the kitchens had just a tube running from the drain out onto the ground. And we've found sinkholes that are like old boxes, I believe, that they used for gray water.
Septic tanks.
Yeah.
Once upon a time.
So.
But your folks upgraded everything.
Yeah.
You know, one thing
it's also worth noting, though, it's a 3-season destination from May through October. And one of the reasons for that is all the water lines are just maybe 6 inches, a foot under.
Right.
So back when Gloria's mother and father ran it, they had it open from Memorial Day to Labor Day, right?
No, I think June, because when I was reading that article that Dennis found, they were doing some work on the property and were planning to be open by the end of June. And that was typically when Harry and Miller Duck would open. And I don't remember my parents ever renting after Labor Day. They would start closing down the cabins Labor Day weekend, and then when we were in school, we would move into our house in Canaan with my oldest sister, who took care of us while my parents closed the cabins, and they typically would be back home by Halloween. So.
And for us now, we're at the end of October.
Yeah, we've extended our season.
So you have lived the history of not only Jackson Lodge, but you've lived a lot of the history of, well, a good section of history of the whole lodge and establishment world out in Canaan. Have you seen any? I imagine you've seen some changes over the years, because in particularly the pattern of how people vacation. You've weathered the storms, and other people, not just the world in general, been able to changes of how people vacation.
Well, Scott, I tell you, the guests that are coming to the lodge are guests that my parents had coming when they were running the lodge. And now we have like third generations of these families coming to stay. They love the lodge, they love the property. We have a beautiful beach. There's not a lot of places up here that have a beach that's sandy and safe for kids to play on. Um, I've got families that have been coming for over 40 years, and the grandparents with their kids and their children now. And when mom and dad were running it, it was mostly fishermen and some families. But then it changed when and the fishermen weren't able to support the business. So I think that's why they decided to put kitchens in the cabin so people could plan their own meals. In the 70s, people didn't want to be on a schedule, I guess, with meals at a certain time, and it's worked. So everybody has their own cozy little cabin, and the people that come back every year call it their cabin, and they want to own it someday. And I'm just so fortunate that these people are still supporting me. During the year of COVID, we were really worried about our guests coming, especially the Canadians. They couldn't come across the border, but we started getting more people from Vermont because they couldn't leave the state, and our database grew, and we got more customers now that are from Vermont than we ever had in the past, because my parents had people from Connecticut, Massachusetts, Canada. A lot of Canadians used to come, but that changed.
Tell Scott about your transition from seasonals to
Yes, and
short-term.
when I first purchased the lodge for mom and dad, I had a lot of families that wanted to rent the cabin for the whole summer. And I did this
Right.
for like 10 years. And then I started renting weekly again because I had all these guests that still wanted to come back. So it was about half the cabins, I think, that were seasonal and half were weekly. And I wasn't able to make enough money doing that because I couldn't charge enough for a seasonal cabin. So I changed
Right.
changed the way I ran my business, and I started renting weekly only or 2 weeks at a time. And then I had guests that were starting to come for 3 weeks. So it was telling. I realized that I needed to raise my rates because they were booking 3 weeks in the summer instead of just 1 or 2. And I decided, I think in 21 that, I mean, what year was it? 1980,
Well, I joined you in
90, 2021. I'm sorry. That I was going to do a nightly rate. And then, and it worked well. I had two reasons that I wanted to do this. I couldn't find enough help to flip 14 cabins on a Saturday or Sunday. So by having a daily rate for the cabins, people were booking for 4 nights or 5 nights or 6 nights, and we still have some people that book for the whole week. But it actually made it a lot easier for housekeeping to be able to keep up and do the good job that we want to do with our cabins.
Okay, we only have about, it's hard to believe, we only have about 7 more minutes left.
Wow.
With this being the 100th year, do you have anything planned?
Well, that's an interesting question that Mark and I have been talking about. We have so many guests that come and stay for their week in the summer, and these people have been coming for years, so we want to have them be a part of the celebration. So our plan is to celebrate our 100th centennial year with everybody. We're not planning like one big party where a lot of people can't make it to. We're gonna set it up so it's gonna be a celebration through the whole summer for all our guests to be a part of.
So we're trying to come up with ideas, products, items that we can hand out to every guest during their week, like ideas like a wooden coin. I'm going to hand out wooden coins. One side will have the Jackson's Lodge logo. The other side will have the commemorative centennial medallion on it. So we can hand those out to the kids, the adults. They can bring those home with them. We've come up with ideas like a 100-item scavenger hunt, and particularly the kids. The kids will love it. So when they complete their scavenger hunt, we'll hand out a patch, a Centennial Jackson's Lodge Marshall Camp patch. So the idea is to try to create a celebratory experience for every guest every week that are seated. And we're certainly open for suggestions. If you've got any great ideas, with the typical, the hat, the mug, coffee mug, the t-shirts, that will be available as well. But we're certainly trying to come up with ideas to share that celebratory experience with all our guests throughout the season.
Are there any members of the Marshall family, just descendants? Are there still any in the Canaan region?
We had a niece of Harry Marshall stop by. Mark, you spoke with her. I didn't get a chance to.
Yeah, that's a great question, Scott. And I have it noted somewhere. A niece, a grand niece of Harry Marshall and Rose came to the lodge last year, and or 2 years ago, and spent a long weekend and reminisced with us. She was young at well, barely had any particular memories except that connection.
Yeah.
That is the only rendezvous we've had with Harry Marshall's family.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, we have about 3 more minutes left. What more would you like to say in that time?
Wow.
3 minutes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, Brian.
I just
your mission is.
I just want. Yeah, I'd like to share that I'm here to be the steward with Mark of this beautiful historic lodge and these cabins that we have taken such good care of and have kept them the same. And our plan is to not change too much, but always upgrade and have everything nice and clean and well kept, and a great place for families to come and stay and spend time and make memories with their families.
I might add to that, Scott, that one of the things that uniquely differentiates us from others is that we're right on the Canadian border on this beautiful international Lake Wallace. We've got Lake Champlain, we've got Memphremagog, and here we are, this historic lodge on Lake Wallace. And so our place, like a lot of lodging destinations, has all of the nice amenities that people expect and look for. But I think one of the things that makes us different, aside that we're on this border, on this international lake, is the genuine hospitality that we deliver to our customers. Hence the reason why all these families keep coming back for 20, 30, 40 years. It's our mission to continue to deliver that very intangible component of lodging. And that's the genuine hospitality that Gloria and I deliver to them. Just engaged with them and just talking to them like family. We even know the family's pet names.
Okay, well, we've got to wrap it up. Do you have a couple words, Gloria, or are you going to let the host finish up?
I guess, I don't know.
Scott, I would say that in just the short time that we have for this occasion, there are so many stories to be able to share yet not enough time. But if there is indeed an opportunity where we can get together with you and help put together an article in the Northland Journal, we have some marvelous stories that.
Oh yeah,
depict
no,
the
we're going to do
history
that.
of the place.
Even if we do it just over the phone or virtually, we'll get it done.
Okay.
Okay, I want to thank you. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you, Scott.
It was great having you. And and thank you to the viewers for tuning in to another segment of the Northeast Kingdom Voice.